Hello and welcome to Business Ethics 243 in the Philosophy Department, UW-Madison. Today you're watching video 1 of 2. We're going to talk a little bit about what this class is about. We're going to talk a little bit about philosophy, what it is, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the assignment structure is going to look like for the course of the semester. Right now, as I said, you're watching video 1 of 2 for the week of June 16th. Okay? This week, the first week of the course, there's 2 lecture videos. Typically, unless otherwise specified, there will only be 1 lecture video per week. This week, I've recorded 2. The reason behind this is just that there is a shortened schedule. This is an 8-week class. I want to give you a video that explains the assignment structure to you, tells you a little bit about what a philosophy class looks like, and I wanted to get you another video in which we actually start getting to talk about a little bit of business ethics, a little bit of the subject matter. So, after this, please go and watch the other video, which we've titled Business Behaving Badly, Businesses Behaving Badly. In that video, you'll receive your assignment for this week, which is due Wednesday. All right, we'll talk more about that in just a moment. For now, my name's Lucas Myers. I'll be the primary instructor for this course. I have a PhD in philosophy, awarded to me very recently. I will give myself a little bit more of an introduction in the other video, but that's what you need to know for now. Our agenda for today, we're going to start off with stuff about the syllabus. Then we're going to move to questions about the assignment structure. And then after that, we're going to talk about philosophy and logic, some easy notions that we should get out of the way to start the course. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the course syllabus, right? Let me take you to the front page. This is what your class is going to look like. Now I can view it as a student, but right now there's no difference between looking at it as an instructor except for these things that are hidden to you over here. Every week there's going to be a module. The modules are under these gray banners. That will cover the chapter that you're talking about, and we'll have your lecture videos and your quiz and your discussion post forum. Okay? Here at the top, you have the syllabus and course materials. The one textbook that's required for this class is Joseph Desjardins' An Introduction to Business Ethics. You have the whole text right here, so you don't need to buy it. If you would like to, you're also obviously welcome to. I don't have it stocked in the bookstore, but of course it's available through various outlets. Now let's take a look at the syllabus. I'm not going to go through absolutely everything on this syllabus. What I will say is my office is in Helen C. White, 5161. I'll be there for most of the summer. Towards the end of the summer, I will be moving. I'm moving to Auburn, Alabama, where I will be taking a postdoc. During that period of time, my office hours will be exclusively digital. For the most part, though, my office hours will be digital, but I will be able to meet you in the office if you need me to, if you would prefer to meet in person because you feel like you need that to communicate something or to have a conversation. That is okay. Because my office hours are on Mondays from 1 to 3 and they are digital, I will need you to reach out to me to set up a time so that I can send you a Zoom link for any meeting during this time. I'm also available for meetings outside of this time, but that will be something that we'll have to discuss individually and on a case-to-case basis. Okay. I have a course description here. It's nice and tidy. You can go read it if you want. I just want to flag a few things for you. First is the percentages of the grades, right? So I will be grading some of your materials, but also Kate, your grader for the class, will also be grading some. She's also a graduate student here in philosophy. Kate Loans is her name. For this class, we will have discussion forums, which are worth 20% of your grade. Quizzes, which are also worth 20% of your grade. These 2 assignments are weekly assignments. 8 weeks, 8 assignments. It might be 7. I think it's 8. And then you'll have a thesis paper that's worth 60% of your grade. The thesis paper will be graded in 3 parts. 1, a 4-sentence long essay, very short. 2, a 1-page outline essay worth 20%. And then a 1,000 to 1,250 word final draft of a paper worth 30%. That will be the major assignment for the course, after which there's not that many opportunities to make up points or to get extra credit. We would have to talk if you felt like you're behind. But you should feel free to do so, of course. Here's the grading scheme that I use. The electronics policy is not relevant for you. And then finally, the other thing that's relevant for your syllabus, on the syllabus, is the reading schedule. So here we have a reading schedule that is divided by topic, reading, and assignment, right? So every week we will have a topic. I'll provide the date for that reading, and then we will have a case. Right, so the first week's case is Love Canal. Okay, your reading in the middle here is the listed reading, and sometimes there will be additional readings here. If there are additional readings, they will be found on the Canvas page. Okay, so for example, for week 1, we'll have business ethics and the structure of the class. We're in part 1 of that right now. You will be expected to read Desjardins' Introduction to Business Ethics, Chapter 1. Why study ethics? There will be a discussion post, and there will be a quiz. Okay. Now, we're going to go through this textbook over the course of the semester, but we're not going to be going in order. I'll try to remind you of this, but you have the syllabus here, and you should follow it closely. So, for example, weeks 1, 2, and 3, we're doing chapters 1, 2, and 3. But we're going to skip chapter 4 in week 4 and go to chapter 5. Then it will never match up again. So in week 5, we're going to do chapter 6, then we're going to skip 7 and go week 6, chapter 8, week 7, chapter 9, week 8, chapter 11, skipping chapter 10. You can also see the assignment and due dates for your assignments that are not weekly on the side here. So for example, you have the 4-sentence essay assigned in week 3, June 30th, and it is due in week 4, right? Okay. Week 6, your essay outline is due, and the final essays assigned will also assign your essay outline, so on and so forth. Okay. You can follow along on the syllabus. All right. Now, back here. Let's talk a little bit about the assignment structure in this class. Okay. So each week you're going to be expected to do these things, right? By Monday, you'll read a chapter in the textbook by Joseph Desjardins, An Introduction to Business Ethics, right? You're expected to be read up by Monday. There will be a lecture on that material. Sometimes I will draw directly from Desjardins. Sometimes it will be a general lesson on the same topic that Desjardins covers in that chapter. Some days it'll be a little bit more supplementary material that you don't have to read in advance, right? So you're expected to read and go to the lecture in order to get all the content. By Wednesday, you'll need to write a discussion post in reply to the prompt provided in the lecture. So every week in lecture, you will receive a prompt for a discussion post in the discussion forum. When you receive that prompt, you will have until Wednesday to write a response to it and post it to your discussion forum. Then, by Friday, you're going to reply to 2 other posts with further comment on their post. So, when you post yours, you have 2 days after that moment to reply to 2 other posts. Now, those 2 posts can either be replies to your post or replies to another person's post. Now, what does that mean? What I mean is one of your, at minimum, one of your replies needs to be to a fellow student's original post, but your second reply can be a reply to someone else's comment on your post, so long as you're meeting the requirements we ask for in a discussion post. That is, we want it to be thoughtful, earnest, articulate, meaningful engagement. We don't want you to just agree and smile. We want you to have something to say and engage and participate in a meaningful way. Okay, so minimum one reply to an original post. You can do 2 of those if you'd like, but you may also do one further reply to a comment on your own original post. All right. Finally, by Friday, you will do a reading quiz on that week's textbook chapter and any other assigned materials. For example, this week you'll be asked questions about the syllabus as well as the reading from Desjardins' textbook. All right? Okay. Now, discussion posts. Every week during my lecture, at some point, I will assign a discussion post unique to the case or to the lecture itself. In your discussion post, you're to write a reply to a prompt detailed in my slide. The prompt will appear to you in the slide. That's the thing that you'll be replying to. You are to reply with your own post every week by Wednesday, and you reply to at least two other students each week by Friday, as I previously said. These discussion posts will count for 20% of your grade. How are these posts graded? Well, we're going to grade on the quality of your original post as well as on the quality of your replies. We're looking for posts that are earnest, engaged, and insightful, and for replies that meet those same requirements. What does earnest mean? It means that you're showing that you have a genuine curiosity for the subject, for the comment that you're making. You are genuinely trying to ask a question that shows that you've engaged with someone. They're engaged when they're answering to features of the text, the lecture, or the post that you're replying to. And they're insightful insofar as they bring to bear some new insight, question, or material or idea that was not included in the that is of your own contribution. That is, that's not included in the person's comment that you're that person's post that you're commenting on, or isn't merely a quote from the lecture. Though you're permitted to quote the lecture, you'll need to do more than that. So here's a reply that I'm not looking for. Wow, great point, right? I don't want you to just say, wow, great point. I want you to think critically about what others have written and carefully reply to what they say with a concern, a question, with some kind of comment that shows that you've thought about what they said and that you have a comment and that this is the content of that comment. Now, some people, when I've done this in the past, have a tendency to write these long, big, 3-paragraph, 800-word essays every week. You don't need to do that. All you need is a few sentences. Probably 2 sentences won't be enough. 3 might be a little bit short, but 4 to 6 sentences should be good. If you need to do more than that, I understand that'll happen occasionally. What we're looking for is that you write whatever is sufficient for you to show us that you understand the text, the lecture, and the assignment that I've given you, okay? We want you to show us that you paid attention, that you understand, and that you're able to think critically. For that reason, right? Okay, so what is the purpose of these discussion posts, right? It's not just so that you have busy work. I wouldn't assign something if it was just for you to have busy work. It's because philosophy is done, ethics is done through the medium of critical exchange, through criticism, through point, counterpoint, through conversation with others. The best way to show that you understand a philosophical education, that you understand the philosophical point of view, and that you understand the value of doing ethics and whatnot, is to show that you are able to hear what someone says, think critically about it, and ask them a question or reply to them or give them a comment that suggests something new, something that they hadn't thought of or that you hadn't thought of, or that might count as a counterexample, or even a case that you think might apply to them in some way, right? When you do that, you're doing philosophy in the way that we want. You're engaged. You're literally doing the activity that we want you to do, that we want to see in you, that will show us that you're understanding the sort of task that you've been given, right? The whole point of your education, the reason that you take all of these other classes, is so that you gain access to these different perspectives, right? I think it's very important that you take philosophy classes and learn how to think logically, rationally, that you learn how to self-advocate, to stand up for yourself, to stand up for others, to be able to articulate your thoughts for yourself, to understand yourself and what you believe, and to understand others and what they believe. Because not just because it's, going to help you do better at school, but because it's going to help you in the workplace in the future, to help you be a better citizen, to help you to hopefully be better business people in the future, to be better citizens of your country and whatnot. And my hope is that you will take these assignments seriously. You'll commit yourself to them. For that reason, I'm not going to make them be so much writing that it turns you off. I want to disincentivize having so much writing required, but I do want you to show engagement. We need to strike a balance here, right? I don't want you to phone it in. I don't want you to use a large language model. I want you to be a human being and have a conversation with someone. I believe that you can do that. You're adults, so let's do that. That's the whole, don't take your education for granted. You'll get as much out of it as you can put into it. All right. Now, finally, the final assignment for this class is as follows. You have a 3-part assignment, a 4-sentence essay. It will have a very specific and defined structure. It'll have a rhythm to it, a cadence. You will just need to fill it in, almost like a Mad Libs, right? Where you're filling in the individual parts of the sentence, okay? After that, based on that 4-sentence essay, after you get feedback from us, we want you to put together an essay outline based on that feedback plus our commentary. Then after that is graded and turned back into you with comments, then you're going to give us a paper. All right? I'm going to give you a variety of cases to draw on to choose what you want out of it. I'm going to give you a variety of views in the class you can talk about. I'm going to give you a variety of ethics bull cases that aren't in the textbook, that are debated on the national stage for competition. And you can pick from among these to select your topic and produce your paper. All right. Now, I'll have more to say about the specifics of this beginning in week 3. For the meantime, let's talk a little bit about the meta subject of the course. It is a course in the philosophy department. So what is philosophy? What is this thing? Well, etymologically speaking, philosophy is derived from 2 Greek roots. Philo, the love of, or the love, and Sophia, wisdom. The original meaning was just the love of wisdom, right? When Socrates was talking about philosophy, he was frequently explicit, the love of wisdom, right? In this way, philosophy is a way of thinking, a way of encountering the world, a way of approaching problems, which is curious, it's open, it seeks to use reason to come to an understanding of what we're talking about, of what's at stake, of what we ought to do and how we ought to think about something. But also philosophy, in contemporary terms, is a wide-ranging academic discipline. Philosophy refers to a number of different subjects with a wide range that may seem unrelated at first, right? So, for example, we often divide philosophy into 7 subdisciplines, though we can also come up with many more than that, right? First, for example, would be metaphysics, the study of reality, truth, free will, existence itself. What makes me the same being that I was when I was a baby? What makes my car the same car that it was when I bought it, even though we've both undergone changes? Am I the master of my own fate? Do I have control over my actions? So on and so forth. Epistemology, the study of knowledge. What is knowledge? We say we have it. We say we can get it through these means. Well, what is that thing we're talking about? Justification. When are my beliefs justified versus when are they unjustified? What does my evidence tell me to believe? Ethics, the study of value, of right and wrong, of how we ought to live, of my duties to others, of moral rights, of justice, so on and so forth. Aesthetics, the study of art, its value, beauty, the sublime, the funny, as well as art forms like comedy, horror, romance, so on and so forth. The philosophy of religion, the rational study of religion. It often encompasses investigations into whether God exists or whether we can have any evidence for or against the existence of God or whether it's exclusively a matter of faith. The philosophy of science, the rational study of science, how science progresses, and what its philosophical assumptions are. What is evidence? Science assumes things about evidence and causation and whatnot. What are the notions required for the scientific method? Not that science itself justifies or defines, but which are assumed by those definitions that scientists do put forward. And logic, the study of valid inference and the study of implication. We're going to talk a little bit more about logic today at the end of this. But first, let's think for a moment. What do all of these things have in common? Well, they involve the application of reason, our rational and critical faculties, that is, to non-empirical features of our lives. That is to say, the questions of philosophy involve the use of reason to answer questions that are non-empirical, that is, that cannot be solved by reference to science. They attempt to make progress using critical and rational tools of investigation, instead of trying to go out and do population-level statistics or like mathematical proofs or whatnot. So, for example, we can't look out there in the world and count the number of people and see how many of them have free will to figure out, do people have free will, right? In philosophy, we have to determine what exactly we want from a notion of free will. What is it supposed to be? Is it possible for people to have free will according to the definitions that people want free will to exist? That people want free will to have if it exists, so on and so forth. Those are questions that we must consult and answer before we start asking the relevant scientific questions about, for example, neuroscience and psychology. Okay. All right. So what I've said is that what unites philosophy is its use of reason and its methodology. So philosophical questions are not solvable by scientific investigation. Indeed, as I've said, philosophy investigates many notions that are assumed in science. Instead, philosophers must use reason and logic to investigate their subjects. So we're bound by the standards of good reason and a system of logical axioms. What does that philosophical method look like? What counts as good reasons? And what is logic exactly? Well, you might start to ask, if philosophers can only use reason, does that mean that there's no better or worse philosophical position? Isn't it all just a matter of opinion? Well, the answer to this is no. Philosophers, of course, share their opinions on subjects, just as scientists do, just as you do, just as I do. But they do not merely share their opinions. They must give good reasons for their views. We do this through reasoned arguments. Those arguments must meet the standards of logic, but they must also be tested by critical analysis of one's peers. In general, philosophers do not accept the ordinary language understanding of fact and opinion. What does this mean? Well, for most of your life, you were probably taught that facts are mutually exclusive from, that is, they don't overlap with, opinion. This is not how philosophers think of these things. Philosophers tend to think things like, philosophers use the word opinion in a way that's commensurate with the following kind of exchange. It's my opinion that the earth is round, and it's Jim's opinion that the earth is flat. Now, we have these opinions, they exist, but I'm right and Jim's wrong. Sorry to any flat earthers in the class. The earth is not flat, the earth is round. Okay? Now, I know some of the flat earthers think that the earth's on a disk and so it's technically round, but we're not going to talk about that. You get the point that I'm making, right? What is an opinion? An opinion is just a personally held belief. But some of my beliefs can be right and some of them can be wrong, right? I believe the earth is flat. I'm wrong. I believe the earth is round. I'm right. Okay? Now, some of my beliefs are mere opinions. What does that mean? It means that the only thing that's required to make it true is that I feel a way or think a way about it. That is, it's subjective, right? For example, my favorite ice cream flavor is strawberry. I don't need you to check on that. I don't need my wife to check on that. I know that my favorite ice cream flavor is strawberry, right? Believing it, feeling the way about it is all that's required in order for that to be true. Okay? So in that case, I have a mere opinion, right? We would distinguish then in philosophy between mere opinion, right, and fact. Opinions can be facts, or they can be mere opinions. All right. Or they can try to match facts or be mere opinions. Depends on what we think a fact is. A fact we typically identify as just some way that the world is, some state of affairs. But not only. We can also think of it as just a true sentence being a fact. Okay. Continuing on. All right. So throughout this course, in addition to testing what the standards of good reasoning are, we're going to have to uphold the standards of good logical argument. Okay? Philosophers accept some system of logic in order to formulate their claims and test them and make sure that they meet a minimum threshold of scrutiny. Okay? Now, in philosophy, logic refers to a system of axioms and rules which we can apply to our reasons. But we don't just use logic in philosophy. More broadly, logic concerns the study of valid inference. A logical system is one which details how information is handled within a system. Okay? So, logic, the field of study, is worked on by mathematicians, philosophers, and computer scientists primarily. The idea is this. Given any system with inputs and outputs, the inputs that come into the system are handled by the set of logical rules within that system to deliver us a range of outputs. Okay? So if I get a single bit of information, say from my wife, I'd like salad for dinner tonight, I can begin to infer information from that information. My wife says she'd like salad for dinner tonight. I know that that means she'd like salad with dinner. I know that that also means that she'd prefer not to have soup with dinner, because we're either going to do soup or salad, but not both. I can also infer that that means she probably wants some cold vegetables with dinner. I don't really know many people who like a hot salad, except for maybe Nick Weiger. So the idea is we have to continue. We can use logic to think about what information follows from the information that we've gotten, the information that we already have. That is logic. Now, your computers, this thing that you're looking at right now as you watch this video, your cell phone, which you're also probably looking at right now as you watch this video, everything that runs on a computer, most of your cars, for example, your washers and dryers, They all run on logical systems that were developed by philosophers and mathematicians in the early 20th century. These philosophers and mathematicians came to found what would later be known as early computer science. Okay, the system of logic that they developed, that philosophers and mathematicians developed, would come to have the form of binary as you know it today. Okay, continuing on. So we're going to go through some basic logical definitions as it pertains to philosophical arguments. I'm going to try and go through this relatively quickly. So in philosophy, we study arguments. An argument is a collection of claims. Some of these claims, called premises, are meant to provide rational support for another claim, called the conclusion. Premises are evidence for the conclusion. That is to say, a premise provides you some reason to believe that the conclusion is true. Consider the following argument. Socrates is a man, all men are mortal, therefore Socrates is mortal. Which of these claims are premises, and which are the conclusions? Now it should be clear, because I've delineated one of these claims with therefore, that therefore Socrates is mortal is the conclusion. The premises, right, when taken together, when combined with each other, are meant to thereby provide evidence for the conclusion. So thinking it through, if Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, then that means that because all of these things that are mortal, or all of these things are mortal, and Socrates is one of those very things, that Socrates must too be mortal. Right? We can actually sketch this out with Venn diagrams if we need to, though I won't be doing it right now. Right? Those two premises give us reason to believe the conclusion. In fact, taken together, they make it so that the conclusion must be true. Now, good arguments are going to meet two standards. The first one, called validity, has to do with what we might think of the hypothetical truth of an argument. Now think about what you mean when you say valid. I know that you mean something different than I typically mean as a philosopher who uses this in an idiosyncratic or technical way. But there's some overlap. When your friend does something and you say, that's valid, you don't always mean, I would do it exactly like that. Sometimes you might do it exactly how they did it, right? What you mean, though, is I can see how that would be the case, or why you would do that, or why you would think that, right? And I think you're basically unassailable for that. Or you haven't committed any errors. Similarly, when we talk about logical validity, we're talking about what if the premises of an argument were true. So an argument is valid if and only if the hypothetical truth of the premises necessitates the truth of the conclusion. What does that mean? Well, imagine a world in which the premises are true. It doesn't have to be our world, it's a hypothetical world. In that world, if those premises are true, the conclusion must be true. If that's the case, then we say that the truth of the premises would necessitate the truth of the conclusion. Hypothetically, right? So an argument works, the first standard, it must be valid. It must be the case that the premises count as evidence for the conclusion in every possible world. That is similar enough to ours in the relevant sense. Now, soundness. An argument is sound if and only if it's valid, meets the first conditions, and its premises are actually true. That is to say, in our world, the premises are actually true. So validity is a premise, it has to do with the structure of the reasoning, and soundness has to do with the actual truth of the claims. So validity is a standard of good reasoning, where soundness is a standard of an argument's truth. So take some examples of arguments then. This is the last thing we'll do today. If the moon is made of green cheese, then Beyonce is president. The moon is made of green cheese, therefore Beyonce is president. Is this argument sound, unsound, valid, or invalid? Well, looking at it, we can see the structure of the argument is such that if it were the case that if the moon is made of green cheese, then Beyonce is president, and the moon is made of green cheese, then Beyonce would be president. So we know that the argument's valid. It's just that it's unsound. We have no reason to think that the first premise is true. If the moon is made of green cheese, then Beyonce is president. Why would we accept that? When we have an if-then claim of that sort, we're not going to think that it's true unless there's some connection between Beyonce and being made of green cheese, right? For example, if we learned of a plot between Big Green Cheese and the U.S. government, such that Beyonce had made a deal with Big Green Cheese that if they were able to replace the moon, that if she was able to replace the moon with green cheese, she would be made president, then we would have reason to think that premise one is true. We don't have any such reason. In fact, we're pretty sure that that's false. And so, there's no reason to accept that claim. It seems false. The argument is unsound. But it's valid. The reasoning works on its own. Other reasoning would have to fail, because we would never accept one without really strong reasons for believing it. But if we grant 1 and 2, then the reasoning is impeccable. Here's another argument. Jupiter is a planet. Mars is a planet. So Earth must be a planet. Well, what do we have here? All of our terms are clear. Jupiter is a planet. Mars is a planet. We know what that means. And Jupiter is a planet is true, and Mars is a planet is true. And we're even pretty sure that Earth is a planet is true. So all of the premises seem true. What do we have to test? We have to test for, is the argument valid? But when we do that, we realize, actually, if an argument is meant to be a set of statements, premises, which together give us evidence for the claim that Earth, or that the conclusion is true, then we don't have a valid argument here. All we have is a set of unrelated claims. Yes, they're all true claims, but they're not a cohesive argument. Why? Because Jupiter being a planet and Mars being a planet is not on its own enough for us to know that Earth is a planet, or even to say anything about Earth. Jupiter is a planet that claims says nothing about Earth. Neither does Mars as a planet. Now, perhaps if we had another premise, Jupiter is a planet, Mars is a planet, Earth is sufficiently like Jupiter and Mars in every relevant respect, therefore Earth must be a planet, now we might have a valid argument. But as it stands, no, the argument is invalid. So it cannot be sound. Because a sound argument is one that is both valid and whose premises are true. Now finally, if it rains in Madison, then Wilson Street will get wet. It's raining in Madison. As I have recorded this today, it's been raining outside. So, Wilson Street is getting wet. What about this argument? Well, it's tricky because it might not be raining when you're watching the video, but it's raining right now. So let's hold on to that fact, about the fact as it is according to the speaker who's speaking. And if we think about it in those terms, then yes, it is raining. So the premises seem to be true. Wilson Street is an open-air street. It's not completely covered. It gets wet when it rains. We know that just by knowing the nature of Wilson Street, of Madison, of rain. So the premises seem true, and when they're taken together, it does seem to imply that Wilson Street is getting wet. So we have a sound and valid argument. All right. Over the course of the semester, we're going to consider a lot of different arguments, and a lot of them are going to be sound, a lot of them are going to be unsound, a lot of them are going to be valid or invalid, and we'll discuss these terms more as we go. I want you to know about these notions: soundness, validity, argument, premise, because they're going to play a role in how we think about a lot of the things we talk about this semester, this summer, over the next few weeks. That said, we'll try to emphasize them and make them clear when they're playing a role. For now, that's the end of what I have for you today, or for the end of you right now in this lecture. Go ahead and go watch the Businesses Behaving Badly video for part 2 of your first week lecture. Thank you very much, and I'll see you then.